All right, great. So now we have a recording. All right, so do you want to ask the other question though to start with, Michael?
Yeah, the other question is basically the one that we get a lot. A resident was annoyed that last time that he had to opt out, and he doesn't understand why we're automatically forced into the program and have to opt out of it. So I know that's something you answer all the time, and I knew you'd have a better answer than me.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to start that one too, and I'll kick this in, and I'll start it with, as I often do, sort of a background description of what the program is based on, which speaks to that opt-out nature of the program. But let me just start formally. I'll say I'm Jeff Domanski, and I am the executive director of a nonprofit based here in New York. And for a number of years, I've been working as a partner selected by Juul Community Power, which is shown in the slide. You guys can see the slide, correct? Confirmation. All right, I'm going to assume.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah, I can
okay,
see
cool.
the slide.
Excellent. Good. All right. So yeah, so Juul is shown there, Juul Community Power, division of Juul Assets. They are the administrator that the town of Clinton and all the other communities shown here by their seals, their logos, have chosen for this program. Together, Juul with these communities and with the suppliers they picked in the past and the one that we might pick going forward, that's the partnership called Hudson Valley Community Power. And this is what I'll show you on the next slide. It's a community choice aggregation program. That's the formal name of the state-enabled policy. It's that second bullet, community choice aggregation. And we're focusing on a community choice aggregation for electricity supply for these communities. Every one of them has passed a local law to enable them. And many of them have had live programs, as we did in Clinton. But now we're out of contract and we're heading into a possible new contract for electricity supply for everyone within municipal borders can take advantage of this electricity supply program. Now, to answer the question, the nature of the program, the reason that we can get a really great competitive rate and a competitive rate that can be, we hope, again, to be for all of our supply dollars to go only to renewable source production from New York State. So hydropower, wind power, or solar power sourcing that we allow. So competitive rate to pay only for renewable production on the New York State grid without restrictions on anybody. The municipality, Clinton, will enter into a contract if we find something that works for everybody on behalf of their community members. The reason it operates well is that it's an opt-out program, meaning it's the default choice for electricity supply decision-making, which is locally determined by the partnership, Hudson Valley Community Power Partnership, led by Juul as the administrator. So it's a new choice. And to go back to the name of the program, community choice aggregation, this is communities aggregating together or aggregating on behalf of all their community members, and then aggregating together to have even bigger leverage, to have leverage in that marketplace for supply choice. It is a new, I gotta let somebody in from the waiting room. Caught the corner of my eye there. Okay. They're joining. Okay, so it is an opt-out program that replaces an existing opt-out program. And this is what a lot of folks don't realize, is that this program, this idea that a municipality can act on behalf of its community members in electricity supply choice, it builds upon the individual customer's choice that's been available to them since the 1990s in New York, since the electricity and gas markets were deregulated. In essence, that was when what some people still exists, the complete vertical, you can call it a monopoly, that the utilities had on all aspects of energy was separated, whereby the utility companies became delivery companies. So Central Hudson, our local utility, and I'm down in Beacon, so it's same for me, and all other utility companies in New York, they are delivery companies because of deregulation. And that's been the case. They can only make money on delivering a product, and we're talking about energy as the product, to the customers that they have. So that is delivery services. And you'll see, I'll show you an example bill, Central Hudson bill, which points out what section of the bill is delivery services. That's the only thing they can make money on. So what we're talking about is this a choice for supply. Supply is the decision of where the energy is made, and for our focus, it's electricity, how it's made, the production method, and ultimately we're making a decision through this leverage about how much it costs for that energy, what we're paying for in terms of how that electricity is made. Now, going back to that original opt-out situation established by deregulation. So when the state deregulated and other states deregulated their energy markets, as I said, they turned the utility companies into just delivery companies, and they created a marketplace for supply. And a lot of folks are probably familiar with this, probably from firsthand, and for others, maybe secondhand experience. Maybe they know of others who've done it. But many people have been able to go into that supply marketplace, either for gas or electric, and enter into contract for a private contract for a company, either to look for better rates, or in many cases, folks have done that to support renewable production, more renewables. I realize I'm getting deep. I'm going to repeat some things. I'm actually speaking about things that are on upcoming slides, but I'll just kind of stick with it for right now. And so that marketplace has been good for some folks, and a lot of people have had some very challenging experiences with the contracts they've entered. But look at it on the surface of what that was. So since the 90s, this deregulation created a supply marketplace. If somebody doesn't enter into a contract, if they don't take advantage of their consumer choice that was established by that deregulation of the energy markets, then there has to be a default choice for them. For those folks who don't make a decision, there has to be an opt-out decision. And deregulation established that, so the state said that if a customer doesn't make a choice for supply, then the default choice or the opt-out choice is that the utility company, the local utility that's doing the delivery, will make that decision for them. The company can't make money on that decision. It's a pass-through cost when they do it. So whatever they pay for the supply, they pass along to the customer. But they will do it without any input from the customer in terms of sourcing. Certainly, they have some leverage because of the size that they purchase, but it's an unfixed rate. They're not allowed to fix a rate. So that is the original opt-out condition, the existing opt-out condition that's been in place for a long time. So folks often say, hey, why are we put into this opt-out program? The very real answer is you're already in an opt-out program. What we're doing with community choice aggregation is adding an additional choice. The additional choice becomes a new default choice, a new opt-out choice. It becomes the electricity rate that if the communities choose a rate, it becomes the new default for folks who don't make a choice or knowingly participate in the program. But it is the new default, but it is by structure of design, with the three goals in mind for why this program was enabled and why the communities that we're working with are doing it. It is the idea of a very competitive rate, so there's cost. For us, it's a promotion of renewable production. So combine that, you can pay less for renewable production than you would do as an individual. But then third is the consumer protection aspect. In the design of this program, enabled in 2016 in New York, it is something where there is absolutely no restrictions. It's a time-limited program. It's a transparent program. The communities, the partnership enters into a contract for a defined period of time with very transparent rates and no restrictions. So there's no contract for individuals. So they can opt in or opt out at any time. It's like a public swimming pool in that way. And so that is a very kind of like setting the stage for the whole presentation there too, but a lot of information that I was going to cover anyway to answer the question of, why does this have to be an opt-out program? The basic answer is the opt-out allows for the leverage for all aspects of the contract, not only the better rate for the electricity supply that we obtain, but the supplier's willingness as well to know that they have a sufficient demand pool where they're willing to enter into a contract, in essence, with the administrator and the community to supply a significant amount of electricity without any restrictions on the customers. So it is from a community member's perspective. I don't think it's too much to say that it really is formally it's a public benefit, but I kind of informally, it's a gift kind of offered out to people to have this team, and with their, with community input. This is a public process. Assess the opportunities out there, parse through all of them, make the suppliers kind of represent themselves and offer the best that they can, so optimizing the offer, and then while also protecting the customers, so doing so in a way where there's no restrictions and the team is watching over the program for the duration to make sure that nobody has a bad experience. So I'll pause there, and I know that was a long-winded answer, but one thing I'd like to say that I don't have in the slides coming up is to just speak to what's happened in the past too. What happened before the state. So we did have a program that ran from 2020 through the beginning of 2020. I think it was January when Clinton first joined, that ran through June of 2021. And that was with a company called Direct Energy. And Clinton, as all but one of the communities that were part of that partnership at that time, decided to proceed into another contract. So we had done preparations prior to mid-year, but then we did enter into a contract through a competitive process. We selected a company called Columbia Utilities. And so we entered into a 3-year contract starting July of 2021 that was supposed to run through June of 2024. That was the time we got a great rate, about 6.5 cents for 100% New York State generated renewable electricity. It was a time soon after that the energy markets turned very strange. The repercussions of the pandemic, but then definitely exacerbated by the war in Ukraine, which we're still feeling the ramifications of on the global energy markets, drove the market prices very high. And so everyone in our program, everyone participating in the program, was very well insulated from that. Because of that, though, Columbia Utilities, for reasons that we can discuss in more detail later, but suffice to say that they wanted to get out of the program. And despite a very restrictive contract and legal requirements that there was an injunction to stop them from leaving, they did manage to find a backdoor by not paying the New York Independent System Operator, the New York ISO, their required monthly payments, which in essence kicked them out of operating in New York and in essence kicked them out of their contract. So they snuck out of the arrangement, which was very unfortunate, but we did receive a lot of benefits. When that happened in July of 2022, it's a return to the story about opt-outs and defaults and the original condition and the program condition. So when despite valiant efforts by Jewel and the communities together, when Columbia was able to break their contract, what happened is people simply returned to the original default condition, the original opt-out, to Central Hudson making that supply choice. And it happened relatively, very heavy emphasis on relatively, it happened relatively simply. I think in July, it actually went pretty smooth. But I say relatively to talk about another point in the past that's important to address and to differentiate from our experience now and what we might expect to experience going forward. And that is the billing challenges that Central Hudson has experienced and continues to experience since September of 2021, when they started to integrate a billing system changeover, which we've learned many within the company thought was not a good idea at the time, that it was not ready for prime time, and that they were definitely proven right, caused and is still causing many headaches. Happy to report and observe that many of those headaches are now turning back on Central Hudson. There's a lot of investigations by the Public Service Commission, led by a number of elected officials that is, I think, appropriately pointing and identifying errors made by them, not least that decision to roll out a system before it was ready. But the point made here, a number of customers had some challenging experiences in getting in or out of the program at that time, simply because of Central Hudson's billing system changeover, which many people conflated or associated with our program, which it was not. And there's a Public Service Commission report published just within the last several weeks that pointed that out very distinctly, that community choice aggregation programs in New York had nothing to do with the challenges Central Hudson experienced. Two very separate things. And so looking forward, lessons learned and improvements are being made in an ever evolving program. CCA is an ever evolving program. And so we are optimistic about what's on the horizon. So that is an introduction and an answer to a question. But my intent to roll forward, I'm keeping an eye on the chat to folks. If you do have any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat. I'm going to proceed with the presentation here, and I will leave time for questions. I know the supervisor has another question that I think I might address, that he thinks I might address in the presentation, so I'll proceed. But I am going to kind of repeat much of what I said, but just point out with some words behind it on the slides coming up. But this is the overview. What I'm actually going to start with after this intro slide is talking about some of the benefits that were exceptional, extreme, that we saw in program savings from that year that we did have Columbia in place because of the strange markets. But not all of it. I mean, the environmental benefits were just the environmental benefits for participation, and there is a very real environmental benefit of this program. But I will return to just a 101 description of CCA, highlight the benefits for the participants. This is explaining the why we're doing this program. Point out that it exists completely in the Central Hudson bill. This is not a program that causes a new billing challenge. It is just a line item change, as I'll show you on a Central Hudson bill. And then we'll talk about the participation, how this opt-out program works, who's automatically enrolled, who's not automatically enrolled, to say everybody can, if the program launches again, everyone can be a part of the program if they choose to be. And so we'll address that in the enrollment and does it affect me questions. And then we'll talk about the timeline at the next steps, and I'll answer a few slides of FAQs that we've collected over the years that we've been doing this, 3 slides of those, and then I'll leave up the contact information while we go through any additional questions. So this is a little bit more than 1 year report. I see there is a question. Let me just answer the question for Mr. Baldwin here. Is it possible to opt into time of day, off-peak, on-peak pricing with CCA? And it is on a slide coming up, but the answer to that is no. The way that Central Hudson's time of use or time of day pricing system works, it's not compatible with CCA, because our CCA rate is a supply rate that applies 24/7. The time of use has 2 differentiation of rates in a day, in a 24-hour period. Lower during off-peak, higher during on-peak. So they're not compatible. So that and it can be really advantageous to stick with the off-peak pricing, particularly if you're charging your car or some other large use during the off-peak time. All right, so jumping in with my dog's agreement in the background, this is a report that we produced about the impacts and the participation rate for just the town of Clinton. And the next slide I have is a roll-up of the economic benefits for all the communities that were partners in Hudson Valley Community Power during that first year plus with Columbia. But there was 1,133 participants in the town of Clinton, in back calculation of the participation during that contract. And the benefit, looking to the right, this meant that this 1,133 customers, because of the support for renewable production on the New York State grid, the grid as a whole, consumed over 13 million kilowatt hours of renewable energy, leading to the avoided emissions, the carbon dioxide equivalent of almost 1,500 metric tons of CO2. So very, very real impacts in terms of avoided emissions by support of renewables versus other production methods. The dollar savings because of the differentiation, and I have a chart that shows the difference between the fixed rate that we had at the time at about 6.5 cents versus the fluctuations, particularly the peaking of Central Hudson's rate. But just for the town of Clinton participants, there was a collective savings of $418,000, $418,760. In essence, that on average, from a calculation that we did, it's about $400 per household, $300 to $400 per household savings just in that about 1 year period. So some very real benefits. Here's the promised roll-up table showing, the town of Clinton's in there with its $418,000 savings, but more population in some of the other communities, less in some. But the collective, if you look to the right, the collective economic savings, the total dollar savings because of the fixed rate versus what the utility rate was at the time was about $7 million during that period. And this is extreme, very, very extreme. We're not expecting the world and the markets to be that strange. And there's some approaches that would be different. It would be much more modest, but this does speak to the value of the program. Ken asked, do we know what 1,133 customers represents at the percentage of total town residents? I didn't do a specific calculation of that, but I know that we had about 70% generally participation in any of the communities shown here. So for various reasons, be it that some customers are not involved in the program because they had a third-party supplier, and they'll talk about that in an upcoming slide. So if you have an existing contract with an Ambit, an Agway, a Viridian, or Green Mountain Energy, you're not included in the program automatically. If you opted out of the program, if you were eligible but you chose to opt out, that's typically about 10 to 15% of folks. So the remaining folks out of those two major groups that would represent who's not included is about 70% typically in a community. All right, so that's the performance of the program. But I don't want to assume, and I apologize to folks who listen to me talk about this without understanding exactly what it is. I hope I described it in my introduction, but community choice aggregation in its simplest form can be described in this one sentence. It's a policy that can be used by municipalities, cities and towns and villages to aggregate energy demand across their customer base, their residents, to negotiate a bulk purchase for those eligible residents and small businesses within the community. And for us, it's a focus on electricity. And for us, it's also a focus on not just a good rate, but a good rate for as much renewable as we can get. And we've been very fortunate that it's worked out very well to support 100% renewable power production. These programs have been very effective, and there are dozens and dozens of communities in New York that have active programs. I think we're starting to approach the 100 mark of live programs. There's more than 150 communities have the local laws and are in exploration, but we're approaching 100 communities that will have soon live programs. And because of that, there's a lot of demand on the renewable production. And that renewable production is not infinite. It's increasing, but it's not all there yet. So it's becoming just like supply and demand, that the renewables are getting more dear, more pricey. We still have the leverage, but it's, because of that and some other reasons around the renewables, as I'll mention in an upcoming slide, we're going to shoot for, and we're going to ask for 100% renewable rate, and we'll get it. We'll see if it's acceptable to the communities, but we're also going to look at some lower percentages. A minimum of 50% is what we're looking for the default choice, but I'll mention that coming up. This is a repeat of what I said, though, about that idea of the opt-out being a new opt-out, replacing an existing opt-out that's been in place for more than 20 years in New York. So we're shifting the selection of the default supplier for electricity from the state mandated where the utility is doing it to the local one, which allows for default choice to support renewables, which the utilities do not. When the utilities make a choice for power sourcing, it is typically around 15% of the total mix is renewable. The rest is fossil-based or nuclear. So it is a vast improvement when you, through this program, are supporting more renewables. So, and I mentioned at competitive rates, and on the bottom, it was authorized in New York State in 2016. So this is the benefits. This is the why. As I just mentioned on the previous slide, we're looking for at minimum 50% as a default, 50% renewable electricity. We're still striving for, and we're still going to ask for through our competitive bid process for 100%. And we hope that works out. It has still been working out. There was a bid that Juul ran for customers in Orange and Rockland territory just a few months ago. And they got an acceptable rate to every one of the communities for 100% renewable. So it's still very possible, but we're just being frank about the state of the renewables market. And so, as the state is also still willing to reward communities through their programs if a minimum of 50% electricity is included. It remains a focus to be a cost-saving opportunity, the second bullet. It is an element of the program, absolutely, that there's no individual contracts, no exit fees, two specific examples of the strong consumer protection. Additionally, the time limit of it, that we enter into a set contract for a set period, and if there is a desire to do it again, it is doing it again. It's you have to go through the whole process to get into a new contract, including public education, awareness building, the outreach, that it can't just be a continuation, which many elements of this program speak to the challenges that people have had in those private contracts. So that's very much what this is about, is giving an alternative to protect people from bad actors in that energy supply marketplace for electricity. Very important on this slide, we emphasize again that Central Hudson is not displaced at all. This does not affect their business model, this program, because it is the same thing that individual customers could do since the 90s. They can make an alternate supply choice. It does not have any interference with the aspect of electricity delivery that they do, which is the delivery of electricity. So they own the infrastructure to get it. They don't own the generation sources. That's part of deregulation. But getting it from locally within their territory, from where it's generated to their customers, right down to the meter, they own that infrastructure, so they're delivering it. And if there's storm damage or any other type of damage to the lines, it's in their best interest to maintain and repair those lines. They still do the billing. You'll see that this is something that happens on the Central Hudson bill. So that's part of their service. Nothing is interrupted. There's no we're not in any lower status because we are, as a grouping, as a aggregation acquiring power. This is not any way a negative from the business model of Central Hudson. So let me step forward. So here's my promised tour of the Central Hudson bill. Give me 1 second while I do a little necessary documentation. I just let some more folks in. I'm just going to take a little image of the number of participants that we have tonight. All right, cool. Thank you for your patience as I did that. Okay, back to the presentation. This is a useful tour of a Central Hudson bill. A lot of people don't realize that their Central Hudson bill is actually a few bills in one, different things in different sections of the bill. At the top of the bill, in this top box right here, the red box up here, this is the electricity delivered section. As I've been saying, Central Hudson is a delivery company. So this is the section of the bill that they're allowed to make money on each month. All of these line items are for their delivery services. This section of the bill down here, underneath the delivery charges, this is the supply charges section of the bill. This is the section of the bill where they're not allowed to make any money. This is a bill for the original opt-out condition, the original default condition. If you remember my saying that, or for folks who just joined, this is the section of the bill that is the default choice established by deregulation, where the state said if a customer doesn't make an alternate choice, that the utility will make that decision for them. And the way we know that that's being done is that there are 3 lines. As I say here, there's 3 line items in this section. That is the indication that the utility is making the choice. As I show by the magic of pressing the down button on my slide deck here, this is what it looks like when somebody has made an alternative supply choice of their own or through a CCA program. And this is actually what it looks like for a CCA program bill. This is my bill from the first 2-year contract that I had as a resident of Beacon. You can see that, I'll go back up, 3 line items with some extra words, but replaced by just 1 line item. So there's my usage consistent now in this bill image, 761 kilowatt hours. This was the program rate that we obtained, the supplier that we selected, Direct Energy, indicated here. Your electricity supplier is Direct Energy. They bid, and it was acceptable to our partnership, 6.361 cents per kilowatt hour, or as shown here, this is in dollars, $0.06361 per kilowatt hour, which is 6.361 cents. That is everything. There is no other charges, nothing else, no subscription fees, no nothing. This is just what happens. If a community launches a program, the default choice through the program becomes this rate, 6.361 cents per kilowatt hour for that contract, which gets multiplied each month of the contract for the duration of the contract by whatever usage a customer has in that particular month for the total supply charges. And Central Hudson, as it does if it's making the supply choice, sends this dollars in its total to the supplier that has been selected. So Direct Energy received the program supply dollars at the time. Again, and the most recent contract we had, it was Columbia. So it said Columbia Utilities up here. If we proceed on our program this year, there'll be another company identified up here that we select. Could be Direct Energy again. Won't be Columbia, that I can tell you. So this is what a program bill looks like, and this is it. You know, the fee that supports Joule to support the program and my nonprofit as a local resource within the community, it's all baked into this. It's an 8/100th of a cent that's part of this that you know, on a per kilowatt hour basis pays for the support of the program, and so that's that. The third section down here is to answer questions and address confusion that folks often have about the relationship to solar decisions that people can make, and many have made. So if you have a solar system, if you have solar panels on your home or business, you know, at your meter, or if you have a community solar subscription, as I do, since I can't, because of some beautiful oak trees in my backyard area, can't put solar panels on my roof because it wouldn't generate anything. But the benefits of solar are down here in the payments and adjustments section, not in the supply section, not in the delivery section. So it's showing this is like a third section of the bill for the solar benefits. As a community solar subscriber, I just have this relatively simple symbiotic financial arrangement which means a portion of a solar field that I subscribed to, that was assigned to me, generated in this month enough electricity that was calculated into an $81 reduction that is subtracted here. And I can get into more of the model of how community solar works if there's a question about that, but I'll leave it at that. If you have solar credits, net metering credits for your own system, you would see the benefit down here. But folks who have solar systems, panels, they know, but if folks don't know that solar systems on your roof or your business, or your home or business, they do typically generate as much or more electricity than you consume most months of the year, or at least half the months of the year. But there are the winter months where there's much less sun, and you are likely not generating as much electricity as you use. During those times of the year, you have to buy electricity at either the market rate. This is a supply decision, so you'd be paying for whatever, you know, what you didn't counteract with your solar system production. There'd be some amount that you had to pay for at the market rate, or if you take advantage of a CCA program, you would pay the CCA program rate for whatever amount of electricity you had to purchase that month. And it'd have the additional benefit, if we are fortunate to get a 100% renewable supply source again, that you would basically be doubling your contribution to renewable support on the New York grid. So now to the point where we talk about who's automatically enrolled. So it is going back to my description of the original opt-out condition and the new opt-out condition. So it's the folks that are in the original opt-out condition, where Central Hudson is making the decision for them, that are for the most part included automatically in the program. So they are considered eligible. And so the exceptions to that are shown here, not automatically enrolled. So if somebody is not in the original opt-out condition because they opted out of the original opt-out, meaning they entered into a contract, a private contract with a third-party electricity supplier, often known as an ESCO, an energy supply company, or electricity supply company, depending on your use of the E. So if somebody has made the choice already to opt out of the original opt-out condition, they've opted out. So they're not included in the new opt-out condition. So they're automatically not enrolled. They can, if they want, join the program, but but that's a matter of their own decision and looking at the contract. They can either wait to their contract, they can either wait till the contract ended, or they can end their contract if there's no penalties. Okay, so that's who's the first category of not automatically included. The second is customers with a block on their account. A block is something that a customer can place on their own Central Hudson account by contacting Central Hudson and saying, please block my account, so that nothing can happen to it without my first removing that block. Many people have done this in the past because of bad experiences with those private ESCOs. It is something that can be done if somebody does not want to be part of a CCA program, the ESCO that we choose through the program, then the block would work. So that's a way that you can be out of the program. And if you want to get back into the program, you have to remove that block first. Also, the third bullet, also not included automatically, is anyone in a bill pay assistance program. So it's an income qualified program that is most commonly known as HEAP, the Home Energy Assistance Program. And the reason that those folks are not included automatically is because there is the possibility that our program rate could be higher than the utility rate in a number of months, and possibly even over the life of the contract, averaged out over the contract. It's a possibility that our fixed rate may not be better than the utility rate. So because it's not a guaranteed savings, it was deemed inappropriate to include folks who are income qualified to be part of the HEAP program. And then finally, to the question that we had before, customers who are on time of use accounts or time of day accounts are automatically not included because they basically opted out of the original opt-out too, just like the first bullet. But in this case, they've opted into the utilities time of use program. So it's a different rate structure. So going forward, though, for those eligible customers that are enrolled, unless they choose not to be part of the program, they would be included unless they choose to opt out by any one action, by calling the program helpline, which my nonprofit team supports. If and when the program launches, and as it did before, when the previous versions launched, letters are sent to every eligible customer from basically paid for by the supplier, but it is done in coordination with this partnership, and it comes on municipal letterhead with municipal seal, identifying the program in detail, and it includes a prepaid opt-out card, basically an envelope with a card that can be signed and just put in the mail because the postage is paid. And there's also a website. There's a form on our website that people can use. Any one of those actions is sufficient to opt out of the program, including, not on here, is seeing us in person. We hold multiple events. And so, we can take the information personally, and then we can use that website form. In essence, everything gets pretty much entered through the website form to opt people out. This is just a rate comparison to give a sense. We did use a program. This was the program with Columbia that had that rate at about 6.5 cents. That's the dotted line. The solid black line underneath the green line, that parallel black line, we did have a second program rate available that was not 100% renewable. It was a slightly less expensive. It was about 5.9 cents, I think, per kilowatt hour. And it was just a choice, an additional choice that was offered to customers, which they could take advantage of at any time. Not only can you opt out of the program whenever you want, or opt back into the program whenever you want, if we have a supplier that gives us more than one rate that we want to include, people can switch between the rates at any time as well. And that's what we assist with to make easy. And the blue dotted line is Central Hudson's rate, the market rate across the July 2021 through July 2022 period. You can see there was only the 1 month in June when it was lower than our program rate. Thus, that difference led to the $7 million collective savings, which was, again, extreme. This is not what we're predicting for going forward into the next contract, but we do have optimism that the next contract will actually work with a satisfactory rate. And so the details of time. All eligible customers will receive that info packet in the spring of 2023 if we receive a satisfactory bid from the request for proposal process that's going to happen likely in about March of this year. And if we do accept a supplier, it's going to, the letter that gets sent to everybody includes all the terms, the benefits, explains the program, the conditions, the opt-out methods, includes that prepaid envelope, has a detailed FAQ page in there. So they'll receive that in the probably in the April timeframe, which starts what the second section, a 30-day opt-out period. Now, again, I'll say again, anybody could opt out of the program at any time, but for those folks in the original utility is making my choice opt-out condition, if somebody wants to stay with that and they never want to be part of our program and go through the process of maybe changing their mind later to get out, if they never want to be part of our program, the state requires a 30-day period for folks to opt out. So any one of those actions during that time, and again, the opt-out, opt-in, there's never any fees. There's none of that. So there's no penalties or exit fees or anything. So, but then after the 30-day period, there'll start to be the transition. There'll be a letter from Central Hudson to all the folks who stay in the program saying, hey, you're in the program, you're part of your community's program. And happily, the utility bill, as of some recent pronouncements by the Public Service Commission, the Central Hudson bill will have even more language in the supply section indicating that you're in your town's CCA program. It's going to identify the Hudson Valley Community Power Programs and have our program number in there, which is going to be so good for everybody. So people aren't calling Central Hudson and then not getting information. They'll call our helpline and get right to the core of information. But that will happen. That transition onto the bill will happen, we anticipate, early summer 2023. That's when that line item change will happen with all that information in that section. So the first meter read date, likely June-ish, was what we anticipate. So that's what we're thinking in terms of timeline. So just to roll up again, why we're doing this, it's for us, for me working in this field for decades now, about in the environmental field, this is a magnificently powerful way to support renewable energy production on the New York grid in a win-win scenario. That it's a beautiful policy design. We don't need subsidies. It's just a market way to have competitive rates to support renewables with numerous consumer protection elements, which I find to be the most pervasively appreciated. And I've come to definitely fully appreciate the value of the consumer protection elements of this, including having us as a resource within the community to answer questions, even just about Central Hudson and some of the challenges. And again, this is the last thing. It's about more choice. It's an additional choice. It does not take away any choices that anyone has. The original opt-out condition is always there. The whole marketplace is there. Anybody could take advantage of those choices. This is just the community giving you one additional choice, structured in a way that it's a membership you have to say no to if you want to, or then you can say yes to it later. So it's really flexible. So I'll just go over the few frequently asked questions slides here. And these are redundant, I think, largely. But the first one is folks here that we're doing a municipal energy program. It's a community energy program led by their town. Many people think it's replacing Central Hudson. It does not. So that's the first question. Does it replace my utility company? No. This does not impact the delivery services, which includes the billing services. Everything remains the same, including storm damage repair, maintenance of all of the grid. The second, does it impact the reliability of my electricity? This is a question often stemming from people's concern that we're promoting renewables on the New York State grid, and knowing realistically that solar is not always powered by the sun because it goes down at night. Wind does not always blow. Hydropower is relatively 24/7, which is one of the power sources we allow, an environmentally responsible form of hydropower. But it's important to distinguish again that this is a, as evidenced by the utility bill, it's a financial transaction on the utility bill, that your supply dollars through the program go to renewable producers in New York State. They, not necessarily locally for the supply program. So, but it is a very real way that your supply dollars are exclusively promoting an increased proportion of renewables on the New York State grid. You still get your electrons from all sources that are connected to the New York State grid. What we're doing is changing the proportion towards more renewables. You're exclusively only paying for renewables, but you are getting your electrons from the whole grid, which Central Hudson and the Department of Public Service and Department of Public Service Commission and the New York Independent System Operator oversee to make sure that the customers get their power reliably. So the New York ISO in particular basically signs off on the ability for more any new source, but renewables included, to make sure that they come on the grid in a way that does not negatively impact reliability, that the electrons are there when we need them. So will the program save me money? Again, it's not guaranteed. This emphasizes the extreme condition in this answer, but it's not guaranteed, but we are confident that it will be competitive. And that what we're talking about is an apples to oranges comparison. Let's not forget that we're talking about, for us, a focus on 100% or minimum 50% renewable, which is much better than the 10 to 15% that the utility offers in terms of renewable mix. And so you're comparing kind of like green power to brown power in this savings question. If you do an apples to apples comparison of what the program offers for that 100% or predominantly renewable rate versus what you could get equivalently on your own as a private customer, then it's almost guaranteed that you're going to do better through this basically buying club of the program. So what if I want to change my supply choice? Somebody can change their supply choice at any time during the program. Once it launches, you can just call the helpline. You can, if there's more than one supply choice, you can switch anytime you want, as many times as you want. There's a form on the website. You can call us, and you can do the same for opting in or opting out. No fees, no penalties. Last slide. Do I have to stay in the program the entire time? Nope. You can opt out or opt back in at any time. Nope. Can I participate if I have my own solar panels or if I participate in community solar? This is what I tried to address on that slide with the utility bill. Yes, you can. It's a separate section of the bill, separate financial transaction. So there can be benefit for having solar panels for when you need to buy electricity to take advantage of the program. And then what happens when the program ends at the end of the contract for the municipality? Well, we saw this with Columbia. People would, if the municipality does not align to do it again immediately, which Clinton did, going from Direct Energy to Columbia Utilities, it can be done seamlessly in a transition with all the awareness efforts, all the education efforts done. But if they choose not to, then everyone just immediately returns to the original opt-out, having Central Hudson do their supply choice. So that's my FAQs. I do see that there is a question that came in from Ken. If the town of Clinton, is the town of Clinton currently enrolled in this program? No. So he says, my Central Hudson bill does not reflect a CCA as the energy source, but rather it's listed as market price. Correct. So that is, your bill probably looks just like this right here, except note that this, I kind of cut and pasted two separate bills. The usage should be the same, but this is what it looks like probably. And this means that we've all been returned to Central Hudson making our choice. There's three line items, the MFC charge, which is the merchant function charge, the market charge, and the adjustment. So yeah, we're not currently, but we hope to be soon. So what happened to this program when it came up a few years ago? Didn't it end abruptly? It ended abruptly. Kathy, you might have joined late, but I described that the program did end in July 2022. Only just over a year into what was supposed to be a 3-year contract. And that was because the performance of the program was extreme and the supplier, in essence, broke the contract. I don't think we can go into, I'm happy to go into more detail. There is legal action currently underway, still Jewel championing the communities. So I best not go into too much detail here, but suffice to say that they managed to break the contract, which is not good. But the worst thing that happened is that everyone just went right back to the original default condition without any kind of weirdness. It didn't cause any additional charges or anything. All right, I think I got the questions in the chat. Folks, feel free to unmute if you have any more questions. And Michael, let me know if I did not address the question that came in.
Well, I'll read it just in case. It's from a resident named Anna who says, will we as town residents be able to choose whether we want fixed price or the variable? As someone who had left the town program and purchased from Columbia directly, I was saving drastically while understanding that market influences might have made me pay more. And I would like that option again.
Yep. So we are definitely going to seek through the program. Not only I focus on the renewable proportion, but and we did reflect that we had a fixed rate in the past, and we are seeking an option for the communities, and all the communities have to agree on the same supplier and the same rate options. We are seeking a fixed rate again. So the relatively simple thing that we had in the past. But there is also a strategy that Joule has devised to seek not a variable rate that varies on a monthly basis, but a rate that I call a modified variable that can vary just in the beginning of the contract to potentially adjust to the volatility that we've seen. If there might be volatility like we've seen in the past, it allows for some adjustment in the beginning, but it settles out within guardrails too. It's not going to be wildly fluctuating variable. But this is what I think this customer has heard about, is some of these discussions where we're considering an option, a possibility of that being advantageous. So if a supplier bids and offers a what I call the modified variable option, that is going to be one of the options that the collection of communities, the partnership, will evaluate to determine if it makes sense. It will, again, be a protection from the volatility that we see typically, even not in strange times, with the utility rate. It would be well within the boundaries of the variation of the utility rate. So still delivering a much more certainty around the rate, about the price, and so the benefits that the program seeks to offer.
I have a question, if I can go back to the time of use, which
Yeah.
I think does help save the grid by
Sure.
running appliances at night.
Yeah.
Is there a simple way I can evaluate whether I'm better off staying pat with Central Hudson's time of use rather than whatever contract you show up with in the spring?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just it's like a weighted average that you'd have to do, your usage times the two different rates. And hopefully I'm not sure how consistent they stay within a time of use program. So it might need to be a month variable, but you just have to kind of basically make an equivalent rate charge based on sort of a weighted average and compare it to our program rate, just to see about the dollars and cents comparison. The one thing about time of use from an environmental perspective, it's the sourcing that Central Hudson obtains, which is, again, predominantly not renewable. So it's, that you already know the difference, but I think you're just really talking about the dollar and cents comparison. So that would be a spreadsheet calculation to come out with a comparative weighted average.
Well, it sounds like, given all the flexibility that you offer our residents for getting in and out, that the smart thing to do is to take a look at their bills, and when the market rate that Central Hudson is charging doubles, to jump into the program. That would only take, what, 30 days?
Yep, it's only supposed to take about, we say conservatively, we've said 1 to 2 billing cycles. During the majority of the program that's been live, it's been taken just, that one billing cycle, which can be less if your billing cycle turn, if your meter read date is sooner, just it's a matter of timing when you make the request. It was worse with the billing system changeover. We didn't cause the billing system error at Central Hudson, our program, but the billing system errors at Central Hudson did affect the movement of folks in and out of the program. It took them sometimes a lot longer to get in or out because of their challenges over there. But we expect things to be better when we launch at Central Hudson because of all the scrutiny, not least. So it should just be only a billing cycle for change. And so, yes, the thing you say that people can do, they can. Any other questions?
Well, I've got another one.
Yeah, go for it.
When your packet comes out in the spring, will it be quoting this rate with guardrails?
Yeah, there'll be a description. If that's what's chosen, what I call the modified variable, if that's what's chosen, yeah, then there'll be a hopefully very sufficient description of that in there. Yeah, the packet has the details of the offer or offers if there's more than one, variable. It might be fixed though. It might be that the fixed rate is the preferable one by all the communities.
At which point I could just look at my last Central Hudson bill and get a very good idea.
Yep.
Whether what you have is better, and it sounds like it would be.
Right, exactly. All right, have a good night, Ken. Ken's jumping off. My pleasure. Anyone else? Any questions?
I want to thank you, Jeff, for doing this again. This is the second time. I don't know. This is like maybe the 6th time you and I have gone through these things.
Well,
you're always
pleasure.
very patient and knowledgeable. And I want everybody to know on here, if you come up with questions later, you can email them to me.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Or call me, or you can call Jeff or Hudson Valley Community Power.
No, I didn't mean to end the presentation, but you can still see the slides, right? Or can you?
Okay, we can't, but I got
Okay.
one more question. Jeff, I'd like to know more about your group. You said it's a nonprofit. Can you tell me the website? I'd like to learn about it.
Sure. It's the parent is that it's called the Center for Economic and Environmental Partnership, but it's CEE Partnership. So it's CEE like Charlie Echo, and then the word partnership.org.
I'll look it up. Thank you very much. Thank you
My
for
pleasure.
your time.
And there's a contact information I wanted to put up. But yeah, so contact us, please. That's what we're here to do, is to take the burden off the town of Clinton too, to answer all the questions. So please feel free to reach out. There's the helpline 859-9099 or info@HudsonValleyCommunityPower.com. And there's the program website, which is still good, HudsonValleyCommunityPower.com. All right, thanks. Oh, it says I stopped sharing. I probably stopped sharing it. So I'll say it slower. 859-9099. That's our local number in the 845 website, HudsonValleyCommunityPower.com, all one word. And then the email is info @HudsonValleyCommunityPower.com. And I will share this recording with the supervisor, and away we go.
Yeah, and I'll make sure it goes on our website within the next couple of days.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Jeff. Good night.
Good night.